The judge was the last man standing, and he knew it. His hands trembled as he locked the courthouse doors, boarded every window with his own shaking hands, and lit every candle. He owned dozens of them, until the room glowed like a furnace. He prayed, he cursed, he hoped the boy had grown too small, too weak, too mortal to touch him. But the boy was everywhere, everywhere. The judge heard chains rattling through the walls. Shadows moved without wind, and in every reflection, the mirror, the window, the polished surface of his desk, those unblinking eyes stared back at him. Ancient eyes, hungry eyes. And then the judge understood. He was not the predator anymore. He was the prey. But the real question burned in his mind. Who was this boy, and why did the dead choose him? The answer would unfold in the darkness, and by dawn, only one truth would remain. The boy had never come for revenge. He had come for justice. And justice, once claimed by the dead, cannot be stopped by any living hand. Before the boy became a legend, he was simply a child. Born in the year the cotton field swallowed 300 souls slaves, overseers, families torn apart, he arrived into a world already dripping with blood. The town where he grew up had a secret, and secrets in places like that have teeth. They bite, they bleed, they never stay buried. His mother was silenced. His father was never known. And the boy, thin and dark-eyed, grew up watching the powerful pretend their hands were clean. He watched the planter's son laugh while freedmen died in chains. He watched judges sign death sentences for crimes the powerful had invented. He watched, always watching, with eyes too old for his young face. The boy began to draw. Charcoal on bark, charcoal on stone, charcoal sketches of faces twisted in screams. Bodies hanging from trees, blood pooling in cotton fields. The townspeople called it madness. The powerful called it dangerous. And the boy, he kept drawing, because something inside him understood what no child should ever understand, that justice was a ghost, and ghosts needed a voice. The boy's drawings were not art, they were prophecy, and soon everyone would know it. One night, they came for him. The judge, the planter, the sheriff, all of them, moving through the darkness like shadows that had learned to walk. They had seen his drawings. They had recognized themselves in those charcoal lines. The boy was dangerous, they whispered. The boy sees too much. The boy must disappear. They found him in the swamp at midnight, on his knees, sketching by moonlight. The boy did not run. He did not scream. He simply looked up at them with those ancient, unblinking eyes, and for a moment, just one moment, the judge felt something break inside him. Terror, pure crystalline terror, as if the boy's gaze had pierced through time itself and shown him the future. But the judge pushed the feeling away. He was the law. The law could not be judged by a child. They beat him. They wrapped him in chains. They buried him in a shallow grave beneath the swamp, covered him with mud and cypress roots, and walked away believing the problem was solved. The planter spoke first. He's gone now. The boy can't hurt us anymore. The judge nodded. But his hands would not stop shaking. And deep below the earth, in that shallow grave, something did not stay buried. The dead don't stay silent, and the innocent don't stay buried. The boy died that night, buried in that shallow grave. But something did not die. Something worse, something that could not die, was born instead. In the darkness beneath the earth, voices found him. The enslaved who had perished under the whip. The children who had been beaten and starved. The men and women silenced before they could speak their truth. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. They whispered, and their whispers became a storm. They taught the boy their names. They taught him their pain. They taught him that death was not an ending, it was an awakening. And they chose him as their vessel. On the seventh night, the earth split open. The boy emerged, and changed. The same thin frame, the same dark eyes, the same small hands. But he was no longer alone. The dead walked with him. They spoke through him. They moved through him like wind through a hollow reed. The townspeople didn't notice at first. They thought the boy had somehow escaped. They thought it was impossible. But they were wrong about what was impossible. What was impossible was that he had returned unchanged. What was impossible was that he didn't age. What was impossible was that when people saw him, they saw not a child, but a mirror reflecting every hidden sin they'd ever committed. He was no longer the hunted. He had become the hunter, and he was patient. The first to die was the planter's overseer. They found him 3 days later, hanging from the same tree where he'd hanged 3 innocent men. His hands were clean, no struggle marks on his neck, but his face was frozen in a scream so terrible that grown men wept when they cut him down. 2 weeks later, the sheriff was found in the river, eyes wide open, looking toward the swamp. No wounds, no marks, just that expression, the look of a man who had finally understood the weight of every life he'd destroyed. The townspeople called it curse. They called it madness. They called it God's judgment. But the judge, he knew what was happening. He had felt that gaze the night they buried the boy. He had seen those ancient eyes, and he understood the boy was not killing with his hands. He was showing them themselves. He was making them face every hidden truth, every buried scream, every sin they pushed into darkness. And the guilt was consuming them alive. People began seeing the boy everywhere, at windows, leaning in, over graves, drawing with charcoal, slipping sketches under or sketches of their faces, their crimes, their secrets, rendered in precise, terrible detail. No one understood how a child could be everywhere at once. But the dead knew. The dead guided him. The dead protected him. And night after night, the boy walked through the town, silent and small, and the guilty began to break. The boy wasn't hunting them. He was recording them. And the dead were never, ever wrong about justice. Years passed, but the boy did not age. The town whispered his name in fear, though few dared speak it aloud. People swore they saw him at night standing at windows, leaning over graves, slipping charcoal sketches under doors. No one understood how a child could be everywhere at once. The sheriff, once alive, swore he saw the boy in mirrors, in puddles, in the reflection of his own eyes. The planter's daughter said he appeared in her dreams, drawing the sins of her father, the screams of those he had killed. The boy did not strike, did not touch. He only watched, he only recorded, and the dead whispered through him, telling him truths no living person had ever heard. Each name, each crime, each sin became a sentence. The boy became a vessel for vengeance, a mirror for the guilty. People died not by his hand, but because he revealed them to themselves. Fear, exposure, terror, these were the weapons of the returned child. The town began to fear the very air he walked through. Doors slammed without wind. Shadows moved when no one passed. And yet he remained silent, a small figure with unblinking eyes, sketching the judgment of the dead onto every surface. Stories grew, and soon no one could pretend the boy was gone. He had returned, not for the living, but for justice. And the question burned in every guilty heart. What happens when the child who should have been powerless becomes the one the dead choose to speak through? That fear would follow them forever. The boy was no longer flesh and blood. He was the embodiment of every secret sin ever committed. The boy had died once, long ago, buried in a shallow grave by those who feared him. But death did not hold him. The enslaved who had perished under cruelty, the children who had been beaten, the men and women silenced before their time, they whispered, and the whispers became a storm. The boy was the storm's vessel, small, silent, but with power the living could not measure. He walked through towns at night. He drew maps of graves. He sketched faces twisted in guilt, and the whispers followed him like fork-thick, suffocating fog that crept into homes, into minds, into the very dreams of the guilty. Judges, plantation owners, merchants, anyone with unagented cruelty each heard the voices before their deaths. Some went mad, clawing at their own skin. Some drowned themselves in their own terror, wading into rivers, unable to bear another moment of the voices. Others simply froze, mouth open, eyes wide, staring into the truth of their sins until their hearts gave out. The boy never killed. He only bore witness. He only showed them what was real. And the dead hundreds, thousands of them, ensured that judgment was carried out through the machinery of conscience itself. The town began calling him the child of the swamp, the boy who heard the dead, the one who made vengeance manifest. And still, no one could stop him. The dead guided him, taught him, protected him. Every secret, every hidden crime, every injustice was etched into his small hand, written in charcoal, burned into memory, recorded in the book of the dead. And the living, for all their power, could do nothing to escape. The judge was the last man standing. He knew it. He locked the courthouse, boarded every window with his own hands, and lit every candle he owned, desperate, frantic, praying to a God he'd abandoned long ago. He prayed, he cursed, he hoped the boy had grown too small, too weak, too mortal to harm him. But the boy was everywhere, everywhere, in reflections, in shadows, in the faint fog drifting along the floors like searching fingers. Charcoal sketches began appearing on the courthouse walls, maps of the judge's crimes, faces of every person he had condemned, drawn in lines so precise they chilled the soul. The detail was impossible. The accuracy was supernatural. Whispers filled the room, hundreds, thousands, overlapping, each voice telling a story of the pain the judge had inflicted. He fell to his knees, shaking, mouth dry, and the boy remained silent, pencil in hand, sketching the truth for all to see. The judge's heart raced, sweat ran cold down his back. He heard chains rattling. He saw shadows move without wind. The boy's eyes, unblinking and ancient, pierced him through every reflection, every surface, every memory he'd ever buried. The night stretched on. Time did not matter anymore. The whispers did not stop. They grew louder, closer, more real than anything the judge had ever known. And as dawn broke over the swamp, the judge collapsed over his own desk, eyes wide in terror, mouth frozen in a scream that would never be spoken. The boy left quietly, slipping into the fork and the reeds, carrying with him the knowledge of the dead, the judgment of the wronged, and the certainty that justice would continue long after any living hand could intervene. The judge never saw the boy's face. He saw something worse, the reflection of everything he'd done. After the judge's death, the boy vanished into the swamp, leaving only whispers and charcoal sketches behind. Years turned to decades, and stories followed him like shadows. People swore they saw him at every site of injustice, every massacre, every forgotten crime. Thin, silent, small, always drawing, always observing, always recording the names of the dead and the guilty alike. Some said he walked among the living and the dead at the same time, speaking for those who could no longer speak for themselves. Soldiers, slaves, freedmen, townsfolk, anyone who remembered terror and cruelty would later remember him too. He became a legend whispered in the dark, the boy who never grew old, the child of vengeance, the vessel of the dead, the recorder of sins. And every time injustice rose in new towns, new times, Newfound's parents whispered his name to children. Be careful, the boy will see what you hide. The dead will speak through him, and there is nowhere on earth where the dead cannot find you. Some swore he finally found peace, resting somewhere deep in the swamp, his work complete. Others believed he still walks, listening to every secret, carrying every injustice, watching, drawing, waiting. The swamp remembers, the dead remember, and the boy's small, silent, unblinking remains the eternal witness. Justice, long denied, will always find him, and the world will never forget the child who walks forever, keeping every secret alive, and every guilty soul in fear. He walks still, in the swamp, in the darkness, in the places where the powerful hide their secrets. And one day, when injustice rises again, people will see him thin, dark-eyed, with charcoal in his small hands, and they will understand. The dead are never truly gone. They are always watching, always waiting for justice. Thank you for walking through the darkness with me. This is a story about justice that transcends death, about voices that cannot be silenced, and about the thin line between the living and the dead. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the weight of it, please share it. Let it spread like the boy spreads through the swamp, reaching those who need to hear it. Subscribe for more dark tales that remind us the past is never truly past. The dead are always listening, and justice, when it chooses you, will never let you go.